Okay, first of all, this is mainly a generalized opinion because I obviously haven't played every single horror game to give a perfect opinion on it. I'll be talking about the most notable ones that I remember mainly. So while games in 2010 were a lot less advanced in terms of gameplay and graphically, horror is one of the few genres that you can really thrive off having worse graphics. You can make the world look a lot more grittier and distorted. For example, Silent Hill and their use of blood in the game, I feel as though it wouldn't be as effective if it was made today using amazing graphics. The poor lighting and texturing of the older games adds to the horror element of it. So as sad as it is, let's say Konami doesn't mess everything up like they have been doing a lot of recently, and Silent Hills was made today. Theoretically, let's say it was given a similar vibe to the old Silent Hill games. It would still be one of the scariest games to date, especially with all the ways they manipulate you into being scared.
From point-blank range. The mother, who was shot in the stomach, was 204-863. For the murders, look behind you. I said, look behind you. Like he was chanting some strange spell.
But there's a certain charm that the older games have, and I'm sure you can agree with me on that point, when it comes to having a badly textured environment. If it managed to convey the dark lighting and mass amount of blood the previous games had, it would genuinely be a terrifying experience. As well as the poor lighting that it has, it was used effectively in the older games, because if you faced down a corridor or something like that, you wouldn't be able to see what's at the end, as opposed to games now where you can see down the whole corridor, because this makes you dread what's at the end of the corridor, and you have to continue forward to find out yourself. And that aspect of the older games, I'm certain, wouldn't be kept, because I feel like if you made a game with really poor lighting in this day, it would be criticized for, using a very good engine and still having poor lighting, and it would probably be judged quite heavily. This leads me into how horror games rely too much on jump scares. Like, a horror game should make you hate wanting to be in this place, and you want to get away from it as soon as you can. But let's take The Evil Within 2, which had a lot of potential to be a very good and compelling horror game. I haven't played the first one, so I can't give a comment on that, but this one was definitely marketed to be a horror game, but it lets go of the interesting horror elements that it has in the game, because it has a very strong opener where you encounter the Guardian, which has a very unique design, but that just gets placed into the open world, and it feels more like a boss style of enemy rather than something that you should be terrified of. And also, not long after the opener, you get faced with the Anima, which is the scariest part of the game, because the fact that you don't know where she is and you have to pay attention just by listening to her singing, and that's the only indication you get of her, is very well done.
It's coming for me. I gotta get out of here.
But they only make you encounter her a few times in the actual whole game. Makes me wonder why it just turns into a generic zombie shooter, when you have these amazing aspects of your game that really make it scary, but then you just toss them away after using them like a couple times. You don't want to overuse it, I get that, but it also wasn't used enough in my opinion, because I understand the idea of having an open world horror game is very brave to, try and accomplish, because you can't really, I'd struggle to find out how you can implement the idea of exploration and freedom in with horror. I'm sure they can be done very well and effectively, but I haven't seen a amazing example of that, because even with the Silent Hill games, they do give you exploration and you can go wherever you want, but it's also a limited space, and it's mainly set indoors. I'd say you spend the least amount of time outside in Silent Hill games, which is a smart choice, because I'm pretty sure the engine back then wouldn't be able to handle actually making the world look and feel scary. That's mainly a thing that goes over into a lot of horror games, because if you make it feel limited and not too open, then it feels like you're trapped in this place, which is how it should be. But with The Evil Within 2, it feels way too open, and it just feels like a missed opportunity to me. Now this also leads me into how they have aspects of horror in the game, but they either don't do anything with it, or it's overused to the point that it isn't scary anymore. And that happens a lot with jump scares. Now I also want to touch upon how games now often can't decide on whether they give you a way to defend yourself or they want to take it away. Let's take the first out last. Because you're put into the asylum, which realistically speaking you should have tons of ways to defend yourself, but that's really my only criticism of the game, because it boils down to a hide and seek type of horror game, which isn't bad, it can be done well, but it's overused to the point that it gets repetitive basically. If you get spotted, you get chased, you hide, and that just repeats for the whole game, and it can kinda get a bit redundant. But you have a game series like Resident Evil, which gives you too many guns or too much ammo, but granted that is a more zombie focused style of game, but you can tell that they will have that aspect of horror in their game, especially with the second one, the remake. Because using their new engine, you can tell that they want that feel of being scared, as well as, just being a zombie game. But you also have the most recent addition to the franchise. I guess you could call it the most recent, but it isn't really. But you have Resident Evil 7, which focuses a lot more on the horror aspects of the series, rather than the shooter element that it has. Now that's not to say that giving you a lot of ways to defend yourself is bad, because you have people like Mr. X, or the Tyrant, whatever you want to call him, and you have him walking around, and that's definitely the scariest part of the Resident Evil 2 game, but that's where giving you all of these ways to defend yourself comes in handy, because even though you can't kill him, unless you progress through the story, it leaves you with this constant dread knowing that he'll be up in 30 seconds, once you've dealt enough damage to him obviously. But the idea of knowing that he's constantly walking around, with the exception of a few like teleports to have a scripted event, but the idea that he's walking around and moving like his own character is an effective way to make someone feel uneasy, because with the Tyrant it feels like he has no script that he's running on. There's no code for him, and that's what it feels like. But he basically feels like a player too, that's essentially what I'm trying to say. But I'm not sure why ideas like that aren't used more often, having a character feel more like an actual person playing with you. You have this amazing genre that you could play around with, and make so many different variations of horror in your games. Like Alan Wake is built on psychological horror, Silent Hill is built on this distorted reality that makes you feel horrified to be in. Five Nights at Freddy's the jump scares, I guess. I can understand from a business standpoint that horror isn't the best genre to go to, because most people don't want to be terrified of, playing a game. It's also such a small market now that it can be capitalized on with something new and innovative, which really only indie developers understand that the most, because you have games like Little Nightmares, Among the Sleep, Bendy and the Ink Machine. These are just like a few examples of games that take the horror genre and spin it on its head. And this shows how much of a gem PT was in the horror genre and just games in general, because for a horror game it gains so much attention and traction, so the fact that that doesn't come out is also another letdown. But most games now really don't understand how to build up tension or suspense and act on it, because they often fall flat because they don't know how to deliver on that scare. Because you could easily scare someone with just music alone and not do anything to act on it, and that would really make someone feel like, okay, where's the scare? And it makes you feel uneasy or on edge, which really makes you feel like, hey, we should act on it, or we shouldn't act on it, to make them feel confused. And then you can get them another time, because they'll be like, okay, maybe there'll be a scare, maybe there won't be a scare, because they'll be unpredictable basically. And that's what PT has, because it has a lot of unpredictability, which is how a horror game is best done, because you don't know what's coming. Now, I'm not an avid horror games player. I can get scared quite easily, which is kind of ironic because I'm talking about horror games. But this is basically just me being more frustrated that you can do so many things with this genre that you have, but no one's really doing anything with it. I mean, there's a few examples. I guess like Man of Medan is horror, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't feel like a horror game to me. I feel like a horror game should make you feel scared, and those style of games don't really scare me. It could scare someone else, but it just doesn't scare me personally. But you could have like a very basic setting for a game. Like you could have an abandoned Japanese school, let's just say that. Now you know that's a very basic setting that you can have. Like that idea has been done a lot, but you can take an original or boring idea, but it really depends on how you execute it, because there are many creative games out there that aren't good because they weren't executed right, and that really happens a lot in horror games because they don't know how to scare you properly, and it really just ends up being like kind of funny to look at because okay, that was supposed to scare me, but it just wasn't scary, you know? And that's where you need to find this balance of good storytelling and delivering on a horrifying experience. But yeah, that's mainly all I wanted to talk about. Sorry if I rambled a bit, but yeah, bye.
That's just how it goes now. That's just how we roll now. That's just how it goes now. That's just how we roll now. Lately I've been living my life. I've been losing my mind. I'll be gone in time. I'll be gone.